Hello, everyone. Welcome in. What an amazing day for the prosecution in the Donna Adelson trial. Before we even get into the, actual things that took place regarding the evidence put forth against Donna Adelson, I have to just take a moment to appreciate the many faces of Georgia Cappleman when having Wendy Adelson on the stand. I just can't get over how much distaste Georgia Kaplan has for Wendy Adelson. It is just hilariously palpable in the most classy way. She's not overtly snarky. She isn't petty. She doesn't do anything inappropriate. She very appropriately puts forth the contempt for Wendy Adelson that, in my opinion, many and all should feel when it comes to the facts of the murder of Dan Markell. Again, it's my opinion, but again, Wendy is an unindicted co-conspirator in this case who did take the stand today, which is what we will get to. I will go through the quick list of the witnesses, the evidence that was interesting from some of the emails, and we will discuss really the most important aspect of the day, the two Adelson siblings, neither of which are the convicted Charlie, taking the stand. And this is the first time we've heard from the quote unquote estranged Adelson child. So today was a very big, very interesting day, but you can't even begin to talk about it without acknowledging how amazingly wonderful and hilarious and just true to the gut instinct about Wendy Adelson that Georgia Kaplan's face just portrays to everyone. It is probably one of my favorite things I'll have seen in a trial this entire year. And that is saying something because there are some crazy moments from the Karen Reed trial, but this just tops it for me. I just love Georgia Cappleman and I love her faces. Now, really quick before we get into it, there was another kind of salty face in the crowd, and I just thought it was worth noting because I thought this cutaway was hilarious. And so let's look at this salty person. Here we have Harvey Adelson, Donna Adelson's husband, father of two witnesses who took the stand today, looking very grumpy, very upset, very unhappy that this is happening. And of course, Harvey was with Donna Adelson when she was arrested at the airport trying to flee, quote unquote, I guess, allegedly, but trying to flee to a non extradition country shortly after Charlie Adelson's conviction. So Harvey's just been alone this whole time since Donna has gone away to jail to await this trial that got on hold when it was supposed to start previously. And he is sitting there looking like a grumpy bear and not very happy. He's, you know, a lot older, and no disrespect. So it's obviously uncomfortable to be sitting in a courtroom for 8 or 9 hours a day. They did go for about 9 hours today. So, of course, it's uncomfortable. He kind of has to be there for his wife, but he just doesn't look very happy. And I'm of the opinion that he had to have known at least something was going on. They probably just don't have enough evidence to tie him to anything. But I have reason to believe, at least in my lowly paralegal opinion online, just my opinion, how could he not know what has happened when, the facts of the case are what they are? So I think even if he didn't take um, a huge portion of planning this himself, I do think he at least found out at some point and could have done the right thing. If I'm right in my opinion, of course, just my opinion of me thinking that he knew somewhere along the line and hasn't tried to help in any way, because the right thing to do, even if your family commits a murder for hire behind your back, is to testify about what you know. That's just the clear conscious thing to do. This is a murder, for crying out loud. So with that, we have Grumpy Harvey here. Just thought it was worth mentioning because as the camera cuts to him, he constantly looks like this. And it is kind of funny to me. So now let's get into the witnesses of the day, and then we'll get into the emails that were published and just some of the ones that I thought were kind of interesting and important. So for witnesses today, we started off with Jason Newland, who is an investigator for the state's attorney's office. And when we are looking at the emails here in a moment, that is who they were introduced through. Then we moved on to Wendy Adelson, the daughter slash co-conspirator of Donna Adelsson. Then we moved on to Robert Adelson, the son of Donna Adelsson. And then finally, Officer Brennan, who was on perimeter control for the scene at Dan Markel's home on the day of his murder. And there's just a few things we will discuss here. Number one, weak cross on everyone who was cross-examined. It didn't move the needle one way or another. In my head, I just could structure this differently as I'm writing this out. I could see that maybe I would have put Wendy Adelson and then Officer Brennan and tried to have drawn it out into the next day calling the brother, because I kind of would have liked them being the jury, to sleep on everything they just heard from Donna's own daughter, and then that follow-up hit with, and she drove by the day of the murder. The witness you just saw drove by as this happened, police tape up fresh, there she goes. And I think that's very strong. And then you come back the next morning and then you hear from the estranged brother, who essentially paints Donna and the rest of the family as people who could potentially do this, with his descriptions and how you can feel that he is distant from them. That would reinforce potentially whoever was thinking overnight about the case and saying, wow, that was really strong. This lady probably did it. And anyone who was maybe still not convinced hears this very credible brother the next morning. That is one way I think it could have been very strategic. But either way, today was very strong. Today had no flubs for the state. They hit the ball out of the park in many ways, even with structuring it how they did. They're the ones in the courtroom. They're the ones with the knowledge of the evidence that they're presenting and their strategy. And so even though I could see it formatted differently to potentially, draw out this sibling arc, so to speak, even though that's not even a criticism, that's just a potential difference, right? It all could have hit so hard at once as well that, it's still going to resonate with the jurors as they go home tonight and say, whoa, that chick was very different from her brother. He seemed very honest. She potentially seemed like she was trying to seem honest. And then they hit it with oh, and by the way, she drove past the scene. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with that strategy either. Just a way that I saw it could have also been done. Both ways, extremely strong. Like, this was just overall a fabulous day for the state. The defense has nothing to combat what the state is presenting through these witnesses. They just don't. They point out something pointless or maybe feels like it's reaching. And when you start to try and poke holes and don't do it very successfully in a very circumstantial case, you begin to look very desperate and silly as the defense. And I think they're working their way up that silly defense ladder as we speak. So let's move on to some of these emails that were presented, because I do think that they're really important. These are just a small selection of some of the emails that were introduced today, and they kind of get the point across. Really what the state is painting on the picture here is that Charlie, Wendy, Donna were all constantly in communication about this whole trial and tribulation of trying to get Wendy and the boys down to South Florida, trying to reason with the unreasonable Dan Markel, which by all accounts from the outside looking in, it really seems as though these people were obsessed with getting their way and their way only, and they're not understanding any sort of compromise or anything of that matter. They just are convinced that they are the ones who deserve everything, not just a partial time with the boys, not allowing Dan to have his time in his job where he wants it, and having Wendy go down by herself and they can split their parenting by time of the year or something of that matter. They weren't willing to compromise on anything. It was Wendy and the boys coming down to South Florida no matter what. And you can see kind of in the longer one just how serious this stuff was. And Wendy did say, I never considered this really. She's, all the religious fighting that Donna kind of proposed to have happen via using the boys in that way, Wendy kind of denounces. But in a way, that also still just makes Donna look incredibly motivated to plan this potential murder for hire, right? And so, I mean, saying how many of these other religious schools there are, even having the kind of consciousness of guilt, in my opinion, to put in, that's not a threat, just a reality. Like, why are you even thinking it could be a threat? Because it's a threat, Donna. That's how I see that. That's just my opinion, but really, that's how it reads to me. And then you see some motive for Wendy as well, right before you're going to see Wendy take the stand. I have been upset about this move since it happened in 2005. That's really telling. She can't get around saying that she really hated where she was, and hating it so much and having been trapped there by the court system could lead people to ulterior plans, a plan outside the law, right? And so these emails, I think, were very damning for both Wendy and Donna, because Wendy's credibility is extremely important in the face of her brother testifying right after her. He is far more credible. He feels like he's telling the truth in many ways. Wendy feels like she is trying to convince you that she's telling the truth. And that's never lost on juries. Very rarely does that go over a jury's head. People are a lot wiser and smarter than criminals, in my opinion, give them credit for. And the Adelson family have constantly discussed negatively the people of Tallahassee, where the murder took place and where this trial is happening. And they speak down on them. And on another note of just how gross the Adelsons are, in my opinion, not only do they just think down about people of an entire place that they don't even know, like Tallahassee, if you notice, they highlighted mom here. And it's very interesting because Donna Adelson's defense appears to be throw anyone under the bus about any piece of evidence that she can, which is so desperate, so sloppy, so pointless to do in a case like this. And there are times where the defense is trying to poke holes and say, well, this is Donna and Harvey's, or if it's not actually signed, they're trying to imply that maybe it's not Donna saying all this stuff. And the defense attorney, when cross-examining Wendy Adelson, kind of felt as though she was trying to throw Wendy Adelson under the bus as well. Like, there's not one real shred of evidence of your mom ever asking you to do anything to harm Dan, is there? And, it's like, no. And if I'm the defense in that case, I'm pointing out that Wendy's the one who got, and the defense was very limited on their cross-examination, so they couldn't do it now. But the person who has financial motive, the person who has everything that can go to the motive for killing Dan Markell is more so Wendy than maybe Donna. Of course, Donna wanted the grandchildren and wanted Wendy to be happy, but Donna hasn't really reaped any benefits other than a short-lived time period before Wendy kind of went off on her own and abandoned that side of the family heavily funded by the money from Dan Markel's passing. And so it's just very interesting to me that Donna is trying to kind of pin the tail on any donkey in her own family that she can. And it's, I guess I shouldn't put it past the Adelsons from what I've learned and can see about them, in my opinion. But with that, I do want to show a quick moment that happened during Wendy and Georgia Kappelman's back and forths here on the stand. And I have two of them, but we'll start with the first one. Just two moments that I really liked and thought were worth sharing.
Did you ever refer to your ex-husband, Dan Markel, as an emotional terrorist?
I very well could have. I don't remember saying that, but
That one's on tab 34.
The description of Dan Markel as an emotional terrorist is just so vivid and so striking. It took me back in the moment. Like I was like, I can't believe she actually said that about him when she's the one, Wendy Adelson, basically, I believe it's been dubbed kind of a Pearl Harbor style of divorce, just dropped the divorce on Dan Markel while he was out of town on a business trip. Basically, just let him know, hey, by the way, I'm leaving you. He rushes home to an empty house. She had already been putting many things in place for this divorce, never speaking to him, never letting him know that this was an impending separation. And so to call him an emotional terrorist when you don't sit down face to face, you wait until someone is far away from you and the ability to ask to have the boys, ask to have anything go in their favor when being the one having a divorce sprung on them. And I, in my opinion, personally believe that that is why Wendy did it that way. The whole goal in the end of all of this, in my opinion, was for her to have the boys and live the life that she wanted. She had a little small hiccup in that she could only move to a new, place away from Dan. But with the boys, there could have been some kind of conversation as to, well, yeah, you can divorce me and move out, but you're not taking the boys out of this house. Right. And so I think she waited for a very manipulative time to leave. And so the fact that she called him an emotional terrorist is pretty damning. And I do think that that will stand out to the jury. Now, the slightly funny part about it, not that she called him anything horrible like that, is how Georgia Kappelman is so quick. And she's like, it's on tab 30, whatever, page 34, tab D, whatever she said, she just knows. And you see Wendy just kind of sigh and look down and know she has to go find where she did indeed say that after trying to be somewhat evasive or play this cutesy little game of like, I couldn't say that. I don't know how she does with all of these questions. It's, it would do her better, I think, in the eyes of like the jury, just trusting her. If she's like, honestly, I probably did say that. Do you want me to look for it? Instead of being like, I don't know, I could have maybe. It's like, no, you said a bunch of bad stuff about this man. Just get up there and own it. Just get up there and own it. And so a very good moment from Georgia Kappelman, knowing exactly what to pick out, exactly what will strike you back, and just giving Wendy the time to go find it and prove Georgia Kappelman right. And with that, let's look at the next clip that I absolutely loved from Georgia Kappelman again.
I might have meant that at the time.
Did your mom respect your decision not to use her suggestions?
I mean, she had to have, right? I'm a grown-up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she had to have, right? I'm a grown-up.
Mm-hmm.
The place to begin, I would say, would be Wendy calling herself a grown-up. Someone with a law degree who practices law, testifying in a trial against her mother for murder for hire, refers to herself as a grown-up. That should be a little unsettling and possibly was a little unsettling for the jury. And then Georgia Kappelman has the most perfect and perfectly timed reaction to Wendy calling herself a grown-up. Georgia Kappelman literally goes,
I'm a grown up.
it's so hilarious and so immediate and just so profound how clearly Georgia Kappelman questions whether Wendy Adelson truly is an adult or not, or if anyone in Wendy Adelson's life actually even viewed her as an adult based on a lot of the information we have received about Wendy, especially from Jeff Lacasse, the boyfriend-ish of the time of Wendy and potential fall man for the murder of Dan Markel if it had played out potentially to the plan that he thought may have been being orchestrated based on his timeline and having been in Wendy's life. We also got a view into Wendy and Donna's personalities from the estranged brother of Wendy, the estranged son of Donna, when he took the stand. Now, this was fascinating to see because he was on the witness list for Charlie Adelson's trial, but was ultimately never called. So this is the first we are hearing truly in a trial from the brother. Now, this brother lives in a completely different state, all the way in New York, and apparently one could really, come to the conclusion that he doesn't have a close relationship with the rest of his family for some reason. And seeing what the rest of the family is accused of, you may begin to understand why, which could also really hit hard with the jury. And I think that's also why he's much more of an important witness for Donna's trial than for Charlie's. And you could clearly see that brother and sister did not agree. Wendy was trying to paint it as her mom is just this nice lady who really wasn't doing anything wrong, isn't too invested in her life, can be pretty invested, but not invested enough to do a murder for hire plot, despite all of the overwhelming evidence of Donna's constant involvement in this divorce and custody battle. Then you have the brother showing that Donna wouldn't be easily swayed in something. She's not a gullible person. She, is a very take charge, my way or the highway kind of person, which is just absolutely damning testimony for Donna. And you know that the jury has to be wondering, why is he the only one who's away from the family? Why does he seem to be the only one who's not potentially involved in this? Now, he was asked by the state, and this, he was actually examined not by George Kappelman, but by the wonderful Sarah Dugan. And she did great with him. And she asked about basically Donna saying, don't talk to the police. Now, the defense did try to rehabilitate that fact on cross-examination of the brother, but will it be strong enough to stop the implication that Donna didn't want anyone in the family talking to the police? Because really the only thing the defense did and clarified was got the brother to say, didn't Donna tell you to not talk to the police because an attorney has warned them to not talk to a police, not at her request, which could somewhat reframe Donna's statement about not talking to the police, but could show that these, particular people are trying to hinder potentially the investigation in some way. Because if they aren't guilty, you would think that they would be okay assisting in an investigation for the murder of their grandchildren, husband, nephews, murderer. Especially if there is never, ever, ever going to be a way that you could be implicated in the murder for someone you truly had nothing to do with. Brother and sister in this case could not have painted a more different picture of Donna and truly what we could just dub the Florida family. Because everyone who is close knit in the Adelson family, who is stuck in their Florida bubble, seems to have gotten themselves in way over their head, have gotten potentially obsessed with certain ideas, so much so that their decision was to murder a beloved father, professor, and son. As the trial's moving through, it's only day 2, but I truly believe the state is making their case and that Donna is going to be found guilty just like Charlie Adelson. The only question I seem to still have is, when is Wendy getting arrested? Thank you so much if you've made it this far in this video. If you're interested in following cases like this or the Alexi Treviso case, which is going to oral argument September 4th, please subscribe as I'll be covering it all along the way with a legal focus. It's your Friday. I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.